How's your grandchild? How's your grandchild? Good, good.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Veterans of Peace, Smedley Butler Brigade of Boston with their Memorial Day ceremony. Thank you all for being here. This is fantastic. What a great turnout we had, and it's really fantastic to be able to have a turnout for Veterans of Peace. Today we will have four speakers, and my name is Joe Cavadas. I'm a veteran for peace. When I left Vietnam, I joined the Veterans of Peace in 1987, the organization, and it's been fantastic in the sense of learning so much about working for peace and all the different people I ran into, and it's really been phenomenal. So Veterans of Peace is an organization that is for veterans and for people who didn't go in the military, but they're working for peace. We have to get more people working for peace now than ever before. So even if you're not a veteran, you can join Veterans of Peace. Today I'd like to have a shout out to Bonnie Gorman, Doug Stewart, and Jesse Perrier for putting the hard work into getting this day together.
And Joe Cavadas.
It's fantastic to be out here working for peace. Now, our agenda, we're here because we are working for peace. We want to end war. We want to have no more flags out here in Boston Common. And we have to bury war as an instrument of national policy. This is the goals of Veterans for Peace. And we do it peacefully, which is very important. We're going to have Jeff Parenti read the statement of purpose. We're going to have John Robinson talk about the deported veterans, which is incredible to think that the U.S. government is deporting our veterans. And we have a poem by David Rothhauser, and Paul Atwood will have a speech on his thoughts of Memorial Day. And we have a guest speaker who is Will Hopkins, who is our national director, who has come down from New Hampshire to be with us today. So we have four speakers, and it's going to be very interesting to see. Then we'll have the listing of all the people who have passed on from the Smedley Butler Brigade, and we'll ring a bell and put a flower at the statue in honor of the people who died. All right, so we'll have the first speaker would be the statement of purpose by Jeff Parenti.
My name's Jeff Parenti. As Joe said, I'm going to read the statement of purpose. I'm an Iraq war vet. So here's the statement of purpose. We, as military veterans, do hereby affirm our greater responsibility to serve the cause of world peace. To this end, we will work with others, both nationally and internationally, to increase public awareness of the causes and costs of war, to restrain our governments from intervening overtly and covertly in the internal affairs of other nations, to end the arms race and to reduce and eventually eliminate nuclear weapons, to seek justice for veterans and victims of war, to abolish war as an instrument of national policy. To achieve these goals, members of Veterans for Peace pledge to use nonviolent means and to maintain an organization that is both democratic and open, with the understanding that all members are trusted to act in the best interests of the group for the larger purpose of world peace.
My name is John Robinson.
Jeff Parenti.
I was drafted for Vietnam. They wouldn't take me because I'm disabled. I got a 4F classification from selective service. But when I found out that I could join Veterans for Peace, I joined, and I'm an associate, a proud associate member of Veterans for Peace. I want to talk about a book that I read that I got a few years ago. It's called Without a Country, the untold story of America's deported veterans. The author's name is J. Malcolm Garcia. It's a fantastic book, and I recommend it to everybody to get this book, and also to contact Mr. Garcia on the internet. So that's my introduction to Mr. Garcia. Now, there are some things that I want to talk about real quick, but since I only have 5 minutes, I can't talk about everything. So I'll just try to hit the high spot. We must understand deportation in the context of people's lived experience in America. What I mean by that is you don't understand the lived experience of poor brown people, Chicanos, Mexican Americans who are featured in this book. You won't get the whole picture. The truth is that most everyone on the earth is a little of both good and bad, strong and weak, remarkable and flawed. We judge them and too often don't ask how they got that way. We send people to war without thinking about the consequences to their families they leave behind, and the ramifications of a father or mother, son or daughter not returning home alive. When family members are deported, removed from the country, their families are left behind the same as it is as if they had died. Deportation is death. The social and moral injuries will always remain. The social and moral injuries will always remain. And this is why families get broken up. This is why people get into drug addiction and alcoholism. This is why when people come back with PTSD and all the other awful things that they suffer in war, this is why they can't get a job. Or when they find out that they thought that because they had a green card, they were citizens. But they find out the green card didn't make them citizens. they find out that when they served in the military, they were led to believe that if they served in the military, they would be citizens. They were led the wrong way. This does not happen. This is why a lot of people get deported. This is why a lot of people get in trouble. This is a travesty and a disgrace. It should not happen in the United States of America. We've got to figure out what kind of country we want to have. What does the country, why does the country deport our war veterans? Who is a real American? I want you to ponder those things. Because there was a law passed in 1996 that I didn't know about. It's in the book. Get the book. In 1996, the law, the Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, called for deporting of immigrants convicted of crimes after they have been punished for their crimes by serving time in prison. And they had to be at least 1 year in prison. So when they got into this situation, they didn't know that this law existed. So if they had an aggravated felony, they could get deported, and they had no way to try to apply for citizenship. So we've got to repeal this law, this 1996 law. It's a terrible law. So I hope that we work on repealing it. And remember, when a veteran, when a member of a family goes to war, their family goes to war. When that veteran gets killed, that family gets killed. They die also. And it wrecks the family. If you read Mr. Garcia's book, you'll see the social and moral, what's the word? Right, social and moral crisis. Is that the way? I'm looking. I lost my train of thought. But it's a moral crisis and a moral. It's just terrible. So I know I went over my time, but please read the book, and thank you very much.
I'm a Korean War vet and a peace activist since 1960. Israel has the power to end this war now and save the lives of countless Israeli and Palestinian children. Nobody wins. Everyone needs to remember the children, living and dead. Need to remember the children whose futures have been ripped out of their very souls. I have a poem I'd like to read. Oh, children, at the end of the day, in the dusty corners of our minds, the horrors of this war will fade, as they always do. Semite, anti-Semite, collateral damage, hostages, terrorists, winners, losers, heroes, all, and all of it will become a dim memory in the illusion of our dreams. Gone as wispy clouds sigh away on their west to east and Middle East in between. Yet hearken, before we lose that final sweet note, desperately clinging to our aborted entrails, let us forever remember the children. The children, here, there, and everywhere. In our open eyes, our guts, stomach retching, mind searing, arms begging, hearts racing, cascading tears and laughter. They are all our children. They belong. One final note. The murder of children is non-debatable and non-negotiable. Thank you.
My fellow veterans, and you who have assembled with us. Sorry. I've been dizzy lately tonight. How many years have we mustered for our own Memorial Day rituals since we repudiated our previous roles as servants of militarism and war making and turned to anti-war activism? How many times have we implored our fellow citizens to note the tragic and dreadful consequences and the deceits and lies that inevitably accompany war? Despite our efforts, our nation's rulers again and again spin their rationales to decry our, quote, adversaries and enemies, to scheme us into yet more war or provide the weapons and intelligence for others to safeguard their interests, as is the case today in Ukraine and Gaza, and many more places that few know anything about. We are all conscious that all of us swallowed the pill in our earliest years. Otherwise, we would not be standing here today as veterans. But our military service, in one way or another, derailed our false consciousness and led us to conclude that war and militarism is a dead end. And so year after year we've appealed to our fellow citizens to take note of what we who know firsthand of war and militarism have to say and to join us and bring this existential nightmare to an end before it brings us all to an end.
Appeal to our fellow citizens to take note of what we know firsthand of war and militarism and what they have to say, and to join with us and bring this existential nightmare to an end before it brings us all to an end. When was the last time the United States faced true danger from a foreign enemy? Could the Vietnamese have invaded our country?
See in there, see how I got it on?
The Iraqis?
And this is
the Afghanis?
to go closer and back.
Was it during
Really,
World
you
War
don't have to,
II?
you can move
Our
this
so-called
by this
good
up and
war?
down if you want to. If you have to do that.
Germany failed to cross the
And
English
you
Channel.
see the red dot? As long as that's
How could
lit.
it attack America? We are told our armed forces were dispatched to root out the evil of Nazism and its anti-Semitism. Yet how do we explain why the State Department refused entry to desperate European Jews? Why were American Jewish pleas to bomb the death camps ignored? Why were Nazi war criminals brought to our shores to aid in the development of our then newly minted Central Intelligence Agency, and to advance the development of ICBMs, and then to project our nuclear threat across the entire globe? But those measures were and are solely defensive, say our leaders. Defensive against whom? The only military threat from foreign governments we face is nuclear war. And I would remind us all that China has nukes today because during the Korean War, both Truman and Eisenhower openly threatened to use them against China, and by implication against the Soviet Union. Despite the millions of deaths caused by American wars since the U.S. briefly became dominant in 1945, our so-called leaders still claim that these fatalities and atrocities were brought about by our nation's unending commitment to the vaunted principles of freedom, justice, and human rights. How do we rationalize such deceitful claims to the millions of Koreans, Vietnamese, Iraqis, Afghani civilians, and so many, many more innocent and suffering victims of our war machine? And yes, we must stress that American armed forces have been among these veterans, these victims. Global geopolitics is an international chess or poker game of power, a derby pursued by so-called leaders ensconced in safe comfort far from the killing fields, who toss their pawns with nary a sigh, always accompanied by avowals of moral righteousness as they cash in their chips on Wall Street. Truth be told, geopolitics of the 20th and the 21st centuries have been a deathly violent dogfight between the elites of nations seeking dominance in their spheres, and our soldiers and theirs have been naught but pawns in their intrigues and their lies. There can be no doubt that World War I led only to World War II, and that at this moment we are sliding toward a third and final war. Each war brought forth ever more devastating weapons of mass destruction, and now the most horrific of all. As humanity faces the threat of nuclear extinction, coupled with the inevitability of ever more encroaching climate disaster, we must persuade our fellow citizens that we are now embarked upon the most insane fool's errand of all time. We must not surrender to despondency. There is courage and possibility in the air, greatly so. The revolt of the young is mounting as they contemplate the withering of their futures, their massive debt, their shrinking unemployment potential, and the growing prospect of dystopian state. We must encourage their escalating insurrection against the ravenous greed and suicidal trajectory of the military, industrial, congressional, media, university multiplex. 1/10 of the Pentagon's annual budget could provide Medicare for all and numerous projects to improve life for all. On too many occasions, I have apologized to students for my generation's betrayal of the future. Now, as many take their matters into their own hands, we must support them to maximum extent possible.
Paul's remarks concluded. I wanted to actually go to the end of what I had prepared because there's something that's directly relevant to the young folks on campuses that are standing up all over the country right now. And so this is actually from his name is Alex Karp. He's the CEO of Palantir, and Palantir is a company that provides intelligence support to the CIA and the IDF in Israel and the other U.S. Intelligence agencies This is something he said about 2 weeks ago at the Ash Carter Institute in a speech that was not meant for peace activists, but here's what he said, and I think it's really interesting given that risk that we face of sliding into World War III, the reality that that this could be a nuclear conflict. So what folks like this who are saying, people who manage the narrative for the empire, sometimes it's really valuable to listen to them and actually hear what they're saying. So here he is. We kind of just think these things are happening across campuses especially, and we think of them as like a sideshow. No, they are the show. Because if we lose the intellectual debate, you will not be able to deploy any army in the West ever. So that's what we think of this media, industrial, university, congressional, military complex as something that's so wealthy and so powerful that we have no power against it. But in this moment where we have kids growing up playing games on the computer with folks in Tehran and with folks in Gaza, they can't convince them that they are different, that that child is less human than our children, less worthy of being protected. The mythology that holds militarism together is falling apart, and it is these young people who are doing that right now. So there is, it does seem like we are on this path, but the reality is that path can be changed. So now I'm going to head back to the beginning of what I'd planned, and I wanted to read a poem from Rafat Al-Arir. He was a professor of poetry in Gaza. He wrote this on in early December of 2023, and his house was hit with an airstrike on December 6th. He was killed along with his brother and his sister, his brother's child, and his sister's 3 children. And this was his last poem just a few days before he died. If I must die. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale. I just finished my 3rd full week as Executive Director of Veterans for Peace at the national level, so I'm just stepping into this role. One of the things that's been on my heart is how much we need each other. We need to know that there are others who thoroughly understand the pain of holding the reality that they are the same as us, that their children are the same as our children. Whoever they want us to believe they are. Whatever compelled each of us to join the armed forces, be it the draft or college money, or just the prevailing American exceptionalist ideology that starts in kindergarten with the Pledge of Allegiance and continues through college. Whether it's we believed honestly that the U.S. is a force for democracy and justice. We as veterans have a unique power in our voice to restrain our government from the killing of children. On this Memorial Day, as in any Memorial Day, I'm thinking about my friends who passed away in Iraq. I'm thinking about the victims of Iraq, the folks whose country was invaded, who were trying to defend their homeland from foreign invaders, which seems an honorable pursuit to me. But I'm also thinking about all of the victims around the world of U.S. militarism. I'm very comforted to have my voice among all of yours today, so thank you. As young people continue to step into that moral reality, informed by this world that's so much smaller than it used to be with the internet and the digital age. National boundaries are meaning less and less. And the stories and narratives that the war makers need us to believe to gain our consent for warfare are falling apart. In 2008, I was able to, in New Hampshire during the primaries, speak to almost every presidential candidate. And there were two, Mike Gravel and Dennis Kucinich, who said that they thought it would be okay if gays and lesbians wed. But by 2012, in every state in the country, same-sex marriage was recognized. That's how fast change can really happen in our world. And I think it's important to realize that as we feel this sense of hopelessness in the face of the military-industrial complex. Slavery was once considered by Europeans as an economic imperative and part of human nature, yet by the middle of the 20th century, it was illegal worldwide. The world can change, and humanity does evolve. The moral arc of the universe does indeed bend in the direction of justice, and we are bending it toward the end of war right now. I have a lot of reflections that I wanted to offer, but I think the most important thing I could do is read our Veterans for Peace national statement this year on Memorial Day, which was drafted by Michael Ferner, who I'm taking over for as executive director, who served for a year as an interim and did a fantastic job. Members of Veterans for Peace remember America's war dead not just once a year, but every day of our lives, with the solemnity they deserve, not the crass commercialism that Memorial Day has become. We remember the war dead and the far greater number of wounded with missing limbs, and the even greater number living with invisible, lifelong devils and injuries in their heads. We remember the contributions they could have made to society, that they literally bottled up or destroyed in the epidemic of suicide rampant among veterans. We remember the domestic violence caused by their devils. We remember the children whose lives were more painful and less joyful than they could have been because of those devils. We remember the way the pain echoes through the generations, refreshed by each new war. We remember how our communities and our nation are so much less than they should be because of this underserved burden. We remember all those that our sociopathic, delusional leaders told us were the enemy. We remember the multitudes of women, children, the old and the sick they obscenely wrote off as collateral damage. We remember our innumerable brothers and sisters of Mother Earth who were killed and wounded. The birds, the four-legged, our family in the sea, the trees and life-giving plants destroyed without thought, the crops and animals that sustain human life. We remember the billions of people who go without clean water, education, and health care because war has stolen the money. This year, we also remember the few winners in what Marine Corps General Smedley Butler called the racket of war. The elite who delight in telling their puppets in government to order up another one. And we remember the winner's mantra, even losing wars make money. We remember all the losers of that racket too. We remember each one. We do not remember some and ignore others. We do not glorify warriors or war because there is no glory in war. On Memorial Day, we remember all the folly and all the cost. We remember what Jeannette Rankin, the first woman in Congress, said as she voted against declaring war in 1917. You can no more win a war than you can win an earthquake. Thanks all.
Okay, thank you.
Now we'll have the list of Smedley Butler Brigade members who have passed away the past few years. We will have Doug list them and ring a bell, and then we'd like to have some people out there catching a flower and bringing it and putting it at the step of the statue. So,
on Memorial Day, Veterans for Peace remembers all victims of war. Our militarized culture remembers only U.S. war casualties and conveniently forgets the millions more dead and wounded who die in war, and we shrug off as the enemy or obscenely dismiss as collateral damage. The women has been mentioned, the children, the old, the sick, the birds, the four-legged, the creatures of the sea, the trees and the crops, the billions who go without clean water, education, and health care because war has stolen the money. No one wins in a war, but losing wars makes money. What I'd like to do is read the names of the people, of the Smedley chapter members. I'd like to read the names of the Smedley chapter members who have died in the last few years. And after each name, Joe will ring the bell, and we will say in unison, Presente. I'll start with Al Armente.
Presente.
David Bonner.
Presente.
Jeff Brummer.
Presente.
Severin Bruin.
Presente.
Bill Kavanaugh.
Presente.
John Clifford.
Presente.
Henry Deeks.
Presente.
Walter Ducharme.
Presente.
Ken Farr.
Presente.
Kate Flaherty.
Presente.
Tony Flaherty.
Presente.
Arthur Johnson.
Presente.
John Mannheim.
Presente.
Wayne O'Neill.
Presente.
Bob Smith.
Presente.
David Spinney.
Presente.
Howard Zinn.
Presente.
And especially this year, the victims war, people of Gaza,
Presente.
people of Israel,
Presente.
people of Ukraine,
Presente.
the people of Russia.
Presente.
Could somebody
We'll give it a shot here. Hold me up. I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Jesse.
I hear a call. Now will I answer, forsake my all to serve another? I hear a call. Now will I answer? I see a light. Now will I follow? They love this life that grows more hollow. Make joy resolve.
Ah!